Okay, take number 20. Or probably more. This is difficult. Hello everybody, my name is Sergiu. Welcome back to the channel. First of all, Happy New Year. Hope you've had a good start of the decade. Please let me know in the comments what you've done for Christmas and NYE. I'd like to hear. We've had guests actually this year, and that was pretty cool because it's the first time we've had guests ever since we've moved here. And that was like 10 years ago. Anyways, yeah, so today I want to talk about this. So that's Loney, my roommate. Yeah, right, sorry. Anyway, that would have been cool, but no. Essentially what I'm trying to do is, if you remember, I think in the first video I mentioned that I do like to draw. And I have a gallery. I like to essentially do concept species and that kind of alien kind of stuff, you know, that kind of stuff. And I've got a gallery. I'll probably put the link in the description down below. And essentially what I want to do is I want to talk about what I've learned, because this is my first time doing this kind of thing. What you normally what you do is you build the whole thing from scratch. You've got, you know, a foreground, middle ground, the background, you've got characters, you've got stuff happening in there, and you're building the whole thing. Not here. This is significantly different, because you've got nearly everything, and you're adapting the character to what's happening in the picture. And in this case, it's essentially the artist and their character in the same picture, to kind of make the characters feel more real in some way. I think it makes a lot of sense, because the way I got this idea was basically that I've been looking up on DeviantArt, and I've seen some people draw their characters into their real life spaces. So they took a photograph of their room, or a room that they're familiar with, and drew their character into the room, interacting with the room in some way, of, I don't know, sitting on the couch or something like that. And while that's cool, I think it's a lot better if the artist and the character actually appear at the same time in the same picture. So this is what I've done here. I've been trying to do this for a while actually, but well, anyway, that's the idea. So let's just jump into it, and I'll talk about what I've learned basically. Hopefully this is gonna help in some way. Right, so what we got here, well, I got a list in front of me anyway, just so that I don't forget anything. Anyway, so the first thing that I want you to look at is let me just zoom in. So oops, I zoomed in, well, I zoomed out. Anyway, so what I want you to look at is here up in the top left corner. You can notice that the light is essentially coming from one direction. So this is just a one-way light, just single light, single off-camera flash that I've used to take the picture. Excuse me. And I think this makes a lot of sense, because if you've got a camera, I don't know, let's say you've got a triangle set up with left and right flash, you in the middle, and the camera taking the picture. What you've got, if you zoom into the picture and have a look at what's happening with the shadows, essentially all the peaks and all the dips are gonna have they're gonna have bidirectional shadows, which then interact with other shadows and create even more shadows, and the whole thing just grows exponentially. And that's gonna be a nightmare to deal with when you're trying to put your character into the picture basically. So I think probably the most important thing, which is why I started with this, is one-way light, single light source. That's gonna help a lot, and it looks more natural anyway, because after all, the sun's just it's a point source, isn't it? So anyway, right, so the other thing I want to talk about is poses, and this is very important. You kind of have to know what's gonna happen in the picture. So in this case, I've got my arm wrapped around him, and that's essentially what I've done. Is in my case, I had a sketch, and I just tried to kind of create the photo around the sketch in some way that makes sense. And obviously the poses have to be right, and especially if you interact with the character, and you should, I think, because it makes it just looks better. It makes more sense as well. It needs to kind of look right. So if you've got, for example, a view angle, very important thing. If your character is viewed from the front, if you sketch your character viewed from the front, and you're taking a picture, and your camera is, I don't know, set really high up next to the ceiling and looking down at you, basically, the angles are not gonna match. So they absolutely have to be exactly the same angles, you know, as good as you can match them. Try and get that without doing, I don't know, think about probably 5% worth of error that you can afford to have, I think. Otherwise it's just not gonna work out. Obviously I'm taking, so probably I should have said this at the beginning of the video, so I'm thinking about this from the perspective of someone who can draw, you know. So I'm not it's not a beginner's kind of thing. I'm just telling what I've learned as someone who, you know, I'm not exactly perfect or professional or anything like that, but I like to think that I can put together a drawing that's acceptable at least. So you're gonna be following about roughly the same steps, but in this case you're not building the environment, you're adapting to the environment. You are building into the environment, if that makes sense. So what you're drawing has to match everything, you know, view angle, perspective, distances, lights, shadows, just kind of everything. And speaking of that, shadow sharpness and detail. Obviously if you've got a low res camera, like, I don't know, say 5-10 megapixels, something like that, you're gonna be looking at not, so it's not, I'm not saying that it's not gonna be sharp, but if for some reason it's not, then consider this: your character, when you draw your character into the picture, the character is gonna be significantly sharper than the than yourself or your friend or whoever's in the picture. And that's very important. You have to blur everything in such a way that makes sense. So I think the best way to do that is to use yourself or whoever the person is that's in the picture as a reference, and you got to think about how to essentially put together the shadows in such a way that they match positions and distances and everything. So if you've got soft shadows behind yourself, for example, then you want to have the same thing behind the character at roughly the same distance, if that makes sense. If you've got sharp shadows, you want them to be as sharp as you can get them, you know, that kind of thing essentially. In my case, the only sharp shadows I've got are across the wrinkles across the shirt, basically, which I've tried to simulate. The other thing that I've learned is expressions. But yeah, it's very important for the characters, especially if they interact with each other. It's very important for them to do the same thing. So you want the expressions to match, essentially. That's that. It's very important. And again, the most important part with that is when you're taking the picture, because you can't modify, you can't really draw on top of the picture, because that's not the point. So you have to get the picture right, the photograph right. The expression in the photograph needs to match perfectly, well, as perfect as you can get it to match with the character. And because the character you can change, you can modify, because you're drawing them, right? But the picture, you're not drawing anything. So yeah, the other, and probably that's the last thing that I've learned, is colors. You have to match the colors of the character. So when you're drawing the character, keep that in mind. It needs to match. It needs to have a warmth across the light, basically, that you're drawing onto them, that makes sense. or if you don't want to, if you already have a character and you're trying to make the picture match with the character, then set your white balance to match. Don't forget about that. That is absolutely very important. It needs to match. And well, I think that's it really. There's not much else that I can think of. Well, not for now anyway, because as I said, this is my first attempt, and I've learned some stuff, but not that much. But anyway, I think I've learned enough important stuff for now to be able to talk about it. And as I learn more when I'm doing this kind of stuff in the future, I'll perhaps make another video about it. I don't know when that will happen, but anyway, speaking about making videos, I'm learning Resolve at the moment, and I'm working on some green screen stuff, so that should be coming up, because I can't remember, have I said this at the beginning of the video, or was it another take? Anyway, so I was sitting there one day and I thought, well, you know, I'm doing all this tech stuff, which is cool, I guess, but it's YouTube after all, and I could do anything really. And I got art, you know, art's happening for me. I got music, which I do professionally, and I got other things. So I don't think there's really a limit to what you can do, and I'm gonna try and expand in a way that hopefully makes sense, or at least things that I can do. I'm also learning more about how to basically be a good host and be on the camera and be somebody you want to watch, because I'm not at the moment, obviously, but I'm trying to get better. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really do enjoy doing this kind of thing. I want to do more, and I will be. I'll try and see what I can do next. But anyway, thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll see you whenever I upload another video. And don't forget to leave comments and subscribe to the channel, because I want to do more of this stuff. And thanks to everybody else who subscribed. I wasn't expecting that many people, but yeah, it's very encouraging, and it's really nice. Yeah, cool. Right. Anyway, I'll get back to work, and I'll see you next time. Have a nice one.